and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week a few friends get together with their improvised ideas. We combine our improvised ideas into more improvised ideas and try to either make a standalone or build onto a story we've already been building. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Seth.
No read today, but we are here to tell you a story. Seth, did you want to give a recap of last week's story?
Right. Okay.
The one that we're continuing on?
Okay. We are continuing this one on, which is I guess you could say a slight sequel / involved with, what was it, episode 37?
Yeah.
So
what was episode 37 called again?
I think it was Friend of a Star.
Yeah, Friend of a Star.
Yeah. Very good. Go give it a listen. Episode 37. So
we've called this one On Mission from the Stars.
All right.
So it's kind of a playoff of all of those things.
Awesome.
Anyways, recap from last week.
All right. So we have, last week Reed had author, and his author is Adrian Connor, and he's kind of a journalist, and he, if I remember correctly, kind of likes to, I don't say if embellish is the right word, but embellish a little bit more into the extravagantness of what something is and how he tells it. So he's kind of, what he writes is mostly true. It's not that it's false. It's just that a lot of, the details are much like you'd I would think, like from legends or stories where, you read a deed of a hero and they, vanquished 1,000 enemies in a day, and you're kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, okay. It's just kind of telling how great he was. Did he or did he not?
Right.
But kind of, likes to make a story, a grander story out of what's really happening, I think is the idea. Reed can hound me if I've done him wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Adrian Connor is kind of, looking for the scoop, being kind of the nature that he is. It's like right on the edge of being tabloid, but not quite tabloid material.
Right, not quite there.
But it's sensational. People like to read it, but it's never in something that he's won, whatever the writer people
Pulitzer Prize.
He's never won anything like that, but I would say he's, popular enough in the scope of people who like to read, a grandness into the news of what they're reading, I guess.
Right.
And he is kind of in search of his, newest edge-cutting story, and he comes across what, I don't know if he knows this yet, but what he ends up finding out after he does some tasks for her, an older woman by the name of Camille, correct? That's what last
Camille,
week,
yep.
Camille. Levi had wise old woman. And Camille is a star, kind of a supernatural being that kind of, her and her sisters were made into being long ago, kind of watch over and direct and control the, I guess you could say that the sciences, the unseen sciences.
Yep. They're kind of like shepherds, each shepherd being given a flock of planets. So each sister being a different solar system.
Right. And what you have is there's not many of them left. And Camille, years ago, has come to this world that our story takes place on. It could be Earth, it might not be.
Yeah.
In search of one of her other sisters that is rumored to still be alive. And so she has kind of come here in search of one of her sisters, which is our friend, the star from episode 37. And I can't recall if we gave her a name or not, but that is...
I don't think we did. That was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, but it is still good. Go back, give it a listen, and it might give some background to how this one goes. But so anyways, he has met her, and she has kind of lost a lot of her memory, but kind of what he found was, she was always kind of asking people to do things for her. And kind of in the way that these entities work is that, they can give a little bit of their power up, for certain things. Not like giving it up, like they relinquished it, but they have a certain amount of sway and power, and can manipulate certain, other aspects of their universe. And so as let's say the ages have gone on and she's, I think, as far as it would be, kind of lived in this terrestrial body, has kind of lost some of her knowledge of her ability or her recollection of
Yeah.
things. And Adrian Connor has met her and kind of started doing little things for her. And as he's done like little tasks, she's regained some of her memory. And so now what
Yeah.
he's doing is basically interviewing her and getting some different stories from her about, you know, the universe and the world and travels and people she's met and helped and have helped her. And this is one of those stories. And the story revolves around what I had last week, the anti-hero. The anti-hero, his name is, remember, Dane Mildred Tanner, and he has kind of like it's like Groundhog Day, where he relives certain parts. It could be a whole day, it could be a slight, few second or few minute moment. Which what that allows him to do is reevaluate and catch details that he didn't catch the first time, that then
Right.
are helpful for his what he does. And he's a private
Right.
eye, kind of private detective. And what happens is a lot of times when he takes on a job, he'll end up getting a lot of these, let's say, premonitions or little blips that
These little relivings.
relivings of certain things
Right.
that he'll need to like recall a certain detail from it. So he's always kind of, and I would say this plays into what I think this episode will be. He kind of doesn't really live inside of our time frame.
Right.
And I think he's really been alive for a much longer time than he really realizes, and I'll explain why later when I get to my story element. This,
Yeah.
but
But
he's
clearly
always
he's someone who has been affected by Camille
correct.
in some way or another.
And his story, or this story, is the story that Camille is telling Adrian that
Right.
we're experiencing here. So
Right.
that is kind of the recap and setup for this week.
Right. So what story element did you have?
I had Ka-Tet members.
Oh, great. I had something based on a book you're reading.
A book I'm
So
reading,
do you want
or
to
a
go
book you're
first?
reading?
Unless, what's up?
A book I'm reading or a book you're reading? Now,
No, I had
you
something
present
based
the
on a book
I'm
I'm reading.
Oh,
I could base it on a book you're reading because I think I know what book you're reading. But do you want to go first for a little bit of lore information, or should I go first?
I'll go ahead and go first. That way I can kind of set up a little bit more of how Dane got his, let's say, quote unquote, power, and a couple of the other characters that
Okay.
are a little bit important to how it connects to the old episode.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so in the old episode, there was another star that had come, and in that one, she had been in the right place at the right time and ended up kind of to her unbeknownst, because these kind of celestial beings, they don't quite understand human life. There was an accident that she had witnessed, and she ended up, I guess you could say, kind of saving several people's lives.
Right.
But by doing so, it trapped their consciousness in a different character, who in our other thing, go listen to that one, you'll figure that all out. But ultimately, when they regained their own bodies at the end of their, spoiler alert, they these people that had experienced that were touched by the star, that celestial power, and technically, because they had kind of already died, kind of entering their bodies, they kind of had, they already tasted death, so they're kind of not quite immortal beings, but kind of trapped, continuing to live.
Yeah, that makes
but,
sense.
But not really. And so after a while, they start kind of, it's going to be harder for them to, stay in one place, or they kind of start going mad or crazy.
Yeah,
Because it's
understandably.
kind of nuts. And so that's where that group of people then ended up meeting Camille, and that is where you get Dane and one of the other members of this group. If I can remember the name correctly here, Dinah Morgan Taylor is for the private eye stuff. She is his kind of secretary and kind of half partner, half secretary involved in what he does. And I'll get into, so anyways, so she is one of the other members of the Ka-Tet, but she is also one of the other people. Her and Dane were two of these people that our previous star had saved, and Camille had given them a choice. And what ended up happening is their connection with Camille kind of is continuing. They're still living on, but to kind of tone the freakishness of always being alive from a human standpoint. That's partly where Dane's kind of, I wouldn't say premonition comes from, but the constantly reliving certain parts keeps his mind wrapped up in not understanding like a direct time flow. So it keeps
so he doesn't come to the terms. He never has to come to terms with the fact that he's like been alive for hundreds of years.
Right, because he's always reliving parts and pieces, and so it kind of keeps him connected to the moment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
His partner, Dinah, is kind of a counteracting part of that, because the other member of these people that would have kind of died in this accident and then got saved by the previous star, had chosen to basically let their body pass on. But again, like in the other one, their consciousness kind of then resides in Dinah and Dane. And so kind of like if you go listen to the other one, is a kind of lives inside of their own heads. So they don't have to necessarily live inside of this constant idea of always being alive, but they give an extra kind of set of conscious or recollection to kind of like a council between the two of them, that they both can hear and can talk to both of them. The particular name has been lost unless we want to come up with a name for them as we go along, but just kind of is that extra kind of conscious that says, oh, this is the other thing you should have paid attention to, or, here, what about this? But an audible kind of,
I gotcha.
So anyways, that's where the other one, but then the Ka-Tet is then Dane, Dinah, and Camille, because of the connection with the star. And Dinah's kind of, I guess you could say, power of this is constant kind of premonitions of the future and a recollection of like a good recollection of the past, like always knows like historical things, always like knows all these things that happened, but then is always getting like a slight premonition of a future thing. So that's where her balance is between, a past recognition and then a future kind of pretense.
So one of them focuses on the present to stay sane, and the other one focuses on the past and the future in order to stay sane.
Correct.
I like it. It's weird, but it's good. So this is several years after episode 36. They're now like a private eye group together, right? That's how you're kind of thinking of this?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is like, how I'm guessing this is, it's been like, there were several years and they were both kind of on the verge of going crazy. And then Camille came down and found them because she can tell since they're star touched, right?
Mm-hmm.
And basically, in order to get information from them, she had to do this thing in order to make them like this, in order to make them sort of semi-conscious. And then they kind of like latched onto her, like, you're one of those things. You've kind of saved us both from being insane. Now we're going to go forth and, partially follow whatever you say, but partially, maybe try and do what's right. Maybe try and right some wrongs. Who knows?
Right. And so I think, especially at first, they did and probably still do behind the scenes a lot for Camille. Now, how that turns out, being that not too many people are doing anything for Camille when Adrian finds her. This could be many years in the future. Maybe they've passed on by now, or maybe have kind of moved on with the way that life works and not really being able to stay all in one place all the time. They've lost the connection to Camille in a physical sense, but they've still been, let's say, star touched, and so they they could be off in the world or universe somewhere. But
There could be, my brain just said this would be really crazy. There could be the fact that, like, maybe the story ends with some great epic thing, and Camille sacrifices, like, the rest of her information and, like, the rest of her power, personality, memories in order to save them to some capacity, right? And then Adrian is their child, the child of Dan and what were the two Private Eye's name?
Dane and Dina.
Yeah, Dane and Dina. He could be like the child, right? He always has this weird itch to figure out. He's really interested in the past and the future. He's got, sometimes he feels like, he has like, he's faintly star touched, you know?
Yeah.
So like this whole thing was just like this giant trek all the way back around,
Mm-hmm.
like eventually we will find you. I'm just thinking of some sort of ending scene where Camille needs to sort of protect the Earth from some dark sisters, some black holes, some corrupted stars, and
Yeah.
so she does something for the whole world in order to extend the power out and protect the whole world. And in doing so, sort of loses herself completely. But Dane and Dina are more star touched than the average person. And therefore, however many years later, their ancestors, their children's children's children in Adrian comes all the way back around and finds her,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. My brain just settled on that, but that's like the end of the story.
Yeah.
So
well,
we're
I think
not
we'll
quite
come
there
back
yet.
to that. Let's hear what you got, and then flesh out the middle parts.
Right. So I'm reading the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks. It's very good. It's a very good series. Reed has used it, I think, for at least one story element. It's the one where magic is like light based. You can like draft light and turn it into different things. I'm finally reading the series. It's good. And I was sort of struggling on what it is I should bring because Reed already brought the magic system. But I think what I want to bring is in the books. I mean, and this isn't just true of just the books, it's just a part of the books that I thought was interesting, was the political system and the religious system are like basically the same thing. There's like the Chromaria, which is like the church, which is also like the power of the whole world, They're the ones who kind of decide who gets what privilege and what happens, but they're also supposed to be like high priests. So there's always this kind of back and forth between like piety and kind of selfishness for sort of accomplishing or getting some new thing. There's like a lot of political drama between the different they're called satrapies, but it's like different city states. It's like each of them gets a representation to the Chromaria, and if you have a good representation, then your country does well. But those people are also supposed to be like religious leaders, and then they're supposed to be like the one most powerful religious leader, the prism, who can, who is supposed to be all powerful, who's not only like the emperor but also like the high priest. That's kind of the thing that I was thinking of bringing. And I don't know exactly how, because we're not starting this from the ground up, and if we were, it'd be a lot easier. But religion doesn't have to be just it doesn't have to be just a belief in a higher power, like a god or something like that. It could also just be your complete and utter devotion to an idea, So we could see sort of rampant X-ism, whatever X is, fascism, communism, capitalism, freedomism, libertarianism, whatever it is.
Yeah, most of those things function as almost any ism functions as a religion.
Right. What I was kind of thinking of is the world has kind of balkanized, there used to be like large countries, but everything has kind of broken down into smaller and smaller countries to where you can't really drive like 30 or 40 minutes except that you're driving through other countries, you know? So transportation has gotten really terrible if you want to like if you want to go anywhere. Cities have gotten really terrible, as like a city the size of New York City might have 3 different countries inside of it. And this whole thing has been by a push from, political leaders in order to make the world more equitable. It's like we need to break up the world so that each person has a vote, but all that's served to do is sort of push power away from the people, and the quorum, like the huge quorum buildings that are now like the size of football stadiums, with like thousands of people trying to like yell over each other in order to get like their, little 5 square mile country voice heard. But everyone feels like everyone is being told that this is like the perfect way. This is it. We figured it out. We figured out the perfect way to make the government. This is like a true democracy, This is democracy with the smallest form of representation possible, If you want to change the world, your country can send its person to the quorum. And it's always these beautiful videos of them walking up to the quorum and them talking into the microphone and everyone cheering as they speak. But the reality is that there are a couple of countries that countries, right? But we could call them cities or counties. And as far as their size, like maybe there's one half the size of like Minnesota, which isn't that big if we're talking about states or whatever, but is huge if we're talking about like population densities, how much people they would hold and how much power that they would hold. So everyone's constantly trying to make deals and side deals, in order to lower gas prices, in order to let trade through. Trains have to stop at every single border, and then everyone has to be checked for passports. Basically, bureaucracy has like swelled, but the people have been convinced that this is the best form of government. This is the way that things are supposed to be. This is like your words are being heard, is what people are told. While if you look out on the streets, for a fact that that's not in any way true, or it's like your representative is going to the quorum and he is yelling at the top of his voice for 16 hours about how your taxes need to be lowered. But the problem is that he's one of 10,000 people who are also doing that, So a political system with a religious like fervor attached to it, which just leads to endless bureaucracy, right? Which also is really advantageous for Dan and Dinah, because the idea of trying to get a police force who only has 2 mile square block, a 2 mile square size of jurisdiction before they have to wait for 3 days while they try to get jurisdiction in order to cross borders is impossible. But a private citizen lending his eye can move across borders with relative ease because he's just visiting, he's a tourist, he's on work detail, he's whatever, he needs to be in order to move across the borders, in order to like do his sort of investigative work. So that's something based on a book I'm reading.
That is kind of the world that they're living in. I'm trying to think back to the other episode too, because I just listened to it the other day. That would be really that would give a lot of like extra, like something that we were looking for in the other episode. That would make perfect sense for the villain, and kind of being a big time villain, but not really, but just kind of almost on a local scale, trying to take control of something smaller, but not, and then trying to work towards something bigger.
Right.
I don't quite have the words for it, but it makes perfect sense to fit into the other episode quite
That's
well
great.
with how everything I think works. So I think in this one, So in the end of the other one, spoiler alert for anyone that hasn't gone back and listened to it, go back and listen to it. So now's your chance, right now. Go listen to the other one. Come
Pause.
back to this one.
Wasn't that a great episode?
It was a great episode. Now you kind of know how it ended, and now you can come back to this. And what happens is that in the end of the other one, the villain, having kind of failed in his mission, kind of goes to this subterranean place and ends up getting killed by kind of his overlords, which you find out are much more sinister and kind of like a underground cabal of evil, kind of pulling the strings of small time, say, villains to do their bidding and play their role in how, kind of this underground thing is trying to gain larger sway over the known world, I guess you could say. And so with that, I think that plays into where I think this, the underground evil thing could be this, let's say, as a Twisted Sisters.
Black Sisters is what I was calling them because I was thinking like black holes.
Right, but I don't know. I was going into was it like in C.S. Lewis's space trilogy where like evil it's bent. It's It's twisted. It's bent. It's angled away from like the true direction that it should be taking. Which I think is amazing. So if you haven't gone and read C.S. Lewis's space trilogy, go and do that right now. Before you even finish
you can
pause
the episode.
Pause the episode, go read those 3 books, and then come back. They're amazing. They're probably way better than anything that this episode will ever be, but go do it, come back. All right, now that you're back.
Those were great books, huh? I really love the ending.
They're absolutely great. So anyways, that's where my mind was. But then because there's the band Twisted Sister, so
I had forgotten about that, but I do remember that now.
So anyways, I think that plays a role, or could play a larger role in what's happening. I definitely think it does.
It's almost like something where the episode 36 is the first book, right?
36 or 37.
I don't remember. Let me look. I thought it was episode 36, but I've been wrong before about things.
I have it tabbed on here.
Yep. No, sorry. Episode 36 is another great episode. Winston is betting on the Hornets.
Ooh.
But episode 37 is Friends with the Stars. So episode 37 is kind of like book 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Episode 30, the last episode that we just, last week's, that was like book 2 where no. That book, that episode and this episode are kind of like book 2 where it introduces, here a couple of years on, Dan and Dina are, trying their best to sort of cope with their insanity and their impending insanity. It sets up the lore for how the world is. And then it introduces Camille, who comes in and is trying to find her sister.
To try to help her aid in a kind of search for the Twisted Sisters, or the Dark Sisters, that are wreaking havoc. And because if she's acting alone, she, is looking for the help of her other star, and ends up helping, let's say, reshape, giving kind of them a little bit of power and a direction that then they can kind of do a lot of work for her in seeking out this underground or dark society that lives in the shadows.
Right. And I think that like maybe a hero should emerge at some point, like I'd say mid-book, a hero should emerge, because none of them are the hero. They're the Ka-Tet members and the anti-hero. So a hero should emerge at some point, someone either like speaking the truth or someone writing under like a pen name that no one knows, or something, to escalate combat, to escalate the conflict.
So here's what I'm thinking. So in what you set up gave me an idea, and part of the resolve, but I think that this might need one more episode to flesh out.
Oh, I think so as well.
But a little bit of a spoiler, maybe towards the end to understand what it is. So, not to kind of bring in a little bit of something based on a book I'm reading.
That's fine.
But it's a book you've read as well. It's the Wheel of Time
Yeah.
series, and the idea in there is like different. Let's say I would say universal truths, not necessarily universal truths, but like things that are like a pattern thing that are like they keep repeating through the Wheel of Time. I haven't finished the book, so I don't know how it all comes together. But the initial part of what I'm getting from it is that like it kind of starts out each book is that and this happened in this age, which was an age long past, and yet an age yet to come. The idea that
Yep.
these certain things are this repeated pattern that maybe some of the events change a little bit, the names and faces change, but it's the same story. The wheel weaves in a certain hero or something that arises and does these things. It could be slightly different each time, but it's the same kind of cycle of stuff, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but
that's pretty much it.
so a little bit of a spoiler, I think, and tell me off if this isn't a good idea. But there's kind
Oh,
of
I
like a
will.
universal idea, and if anyone is kind of familiar with the Trinity,
Like the
like
Christian
the
Trinity?
Um, the Christian Trinity, but again, kind of using the Wheel of Time thing. It's a concept that's shared throughout time that is interesting to realize, across like a lot of different things. To put in
Yeah.
perspective, just about it's like if you look into like other, not even like other religions, but like a lot of other like ancient stories, they have a creation story. At some point, some god or groups of gods form together what we see as the earth and time and stuff, and these are the things that happened. And and a lot of them have a flood story where the earth was flooded and one guy and his family survived. It's like stuff like that where like
Yeah.
names and a little bit of the details are different in different cultures and how they describe it, but you can kind of
Right.
pick out similarities. One of those is like a Trinity idea. I think a lot of people are familiar with like Egyptian uh, terminology, or probably from some perspectives, the Christian idea. Um, but in the Egyptian one, you have, or in almost most of the other ones, you have a like a father figure, a mother figure, and then the son figure. Trinity idea. You have kind of the higher god that then has a son that is the same, or is in matter of facto the same as the father, and so those that follow him follow the father. And then you have like the mother figure that kind of makes the triune kind of idea between this.
Yeah.
In Egyptian thing, it's Isis, Osiris, and Horus, I believe. Where you have, Osiris is, the father god figure that through Isis has Horus, and then, Horus, if I'm remembering some of the things correctly, kind of brings people to follow him, and in following him in his direction is following the father Osiris, and then you have the mother figure. Anyways, all in all, so then you have kind of tying some of that into here. In the end of what happens, I think, is Camille gives up her power and hands it
Yeah.
over to Dane and Dinah, who kind of almost elevate into I guess you say, a god type position. And our author, who maybe doesn't know it yet, is their son, who then through this other, say, hero maybe in this story arises, might be almost like a John the Baptist, who's kind of like hearkening the way before, the chosen one that will bring
Right.
bring all people to the truth and the way of righteousness and salvation, however you want to look at it. And so maybe that's the hero that arises in this story. is a kind of a prophet or a character that is hearkening, like, and so it's kind of like giving all that to say that then this character then is hearkening like a pretense that, all these things that this other person will arise and he will be the son of, the father figure and the mother figure that overcame and, have given unto, the world their son to lead all people into the truth of reality or whatever, however you want to have it, which then kind of through talking to Camille, that's partly why maybe she's telling him this story, is kind of then that reveal that, you are the beloved son. I don't know, how does that sound?
I mean, that sounds really heretical if you're a Christian, but um,
Yeah.
I don't know how exactly. I'm trying to figure out how exactly that would work because I wouldn't necessarily want them to be elevated to like godhood. Because what I was thinking of is it would be more like the promise in the garden after the fall. You will bruise his head, but he will crush. He will bruise his heel, but he will crush your head, like what he gave to the serpent. You know, um, basically how I view it is like at the end, Camille needs to remember who she is, but she also needs to hide who she is. And so she basically protects the whole world, but then loses who she is. But there's the assurance that at some point, the power that resonates inside of Dean and Dina, Dane and Dina, will bring their children back to her at some point, And for stars, 1,000 years is fine, That's what I was kind of thinking of. Because I wouldn't want Dane and Dina to be sort of elevated to like a god status, and I think we do need to figure out how the adversity happens and how it ramps up to where the whole planet's being accosted, which I think we could do really easily with the Black Sisters, evil stars coming down to try and, but why would they need to manipulate the earth? Why do humans matter? It could be that somehow this is the first place that sentient life is. It could be that this sentient life, it has finally reached a place that it's about to make its choice as to which master it will serve, and the whole universe is kind of filled up with a war between separate entities of a bunch of different races that have already decided. But if the humans decide this way or that way, it'll tip the balance for some reason. You could kind of view the world right now, even though it has all the terrible things, as the garden, and the people come into the garden in order to sort of turn the humans aside, and Camille came to find her sister, but also to sort of turn them back to the way that they're supposed to go. You know what I mean? So I think that we need to do another episode, but I think that we have definitely created good groundwork for this. Do you think so, Seth, or no?
I think so.
Okay.
I think at least one more, with a couple other things, because I think I was really hoping, because I think Reed had unique artifact.
Yeah, he did.
And so I was hoping that might bring in another little part. So I think at least one more will set this kind of down the right path and get it sorted out.
Okay. So what we're going to do with the next episode is we want to nail in what the adversity is, what it is they're fighting against. Because at first, they're fighting against just mediocrity and criminals. But as you sort of call yourself out as someone who fights against mediocrity and criminals, the criminals get worse, The mediocrity typically goes away. You can inspire people to greatness, but the criminals kind of increase,
Yeah.
So, and then I guess the end. And we can fully hash out what exactly happens. We've kind of both stated our ideas about what we think would be cool, but we can kind of hash out what exactly happens. So, adversity and ending. And then wrapping up whatever happens with Adrian and Camille in the nursing home, / memory care place where she's laying this story out to him.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah, it sounds good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait It Gets Better, workshopping ideas. It's an important part of coming up with ideas. If you like this episode and you liked where these episodes are going, I would say, that's awesome. All you need to do is like the episode. I don't need you to do anything else. I don't require anything else from you. If you would like to tell me that you like this episode, you can at me on Twitter at @GetsBetterCast, or you can send me an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com. If you didn't like this episode and you thought maybe we should have gone a different way, send me an email. Let me know about it. I'll take it into consideration and figure out if I need to just stop my podcasting career altogether. I'm open to it. I'm a busy guy. I don't need to be podcasting. If you can come up with better ideas than I can, you can have the IP. And for everyone else, I would say, just wait. It gets better.